We are recording this, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll be putting this out there on the MasterMind site, which is healersresource.com. If you haven't already been out there, a lot of people have been. I think we've got over 70 people that are registered to take advantage of that. But there are 9 classes from my first season that I went through. The other thing that when we get done with this, if you have suggestions for particular things you'd like to hear or learn about, then let me know, because we're going to try and put these in a small 1-hour time frame. Now, obviously, we do have more stuff than what we do cover in this. This is meant to give the person who's interested in finding out, first of all, my style of teaching, but also the information that hopefully is going to be good for you on a personal basis. I personally believe that everybody should learn how to use the emotion code, at least. And I've been given permission by Dr. Nelson to go over that in my work so that nobody has to worry about, am I telling you something you shouldn't know? That's not it at all. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to learn that, because you're going to be surprised what you can do for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. And we'll do the presentation. How's that? I'm going to slide. I can see, almost everybody. Not everybody, but I can see a lot. And I want to make sure that you all can see me. There we go. Make sure that I see myself so that you can see me. That way, when we do this recording, we'll be able to stick me up in the corner or any questions, that type of thing, as we go through. So the question that we're dealing with tonight is, are you a healer, or would you like to become a healer? And that, I think, is probably the biggest question that people have. And I want to assure you right now that anybody can do this. You really can. So what we're going to try and do tonight is we're going to try and understand what energy healing is, the limits of traditional Western medicine, the miracle of energy healing and why this actually works, and then what really a sickness is. And that, I think, is probably plenty of stuff to go over. Now, if we have something particular that you'd like to ask afterwards, not a problem. Ask away. In fact, if you got something that you want to discuss, just go ahead and unmute yourself and say, hey, Tom, what are you talking about there? So let's go ahead and let's move forward. Becoming an energy healer. And the question is, where do you start? Well, for me, I'm going to take you back through a few things that I've experienced. But the requirements that you need are a desire to make a difference, willingness to learn, because you do have to practice a little bit, develop a trust in your own ability, and then practice. Now, that may not match up with what you've heard before, but you don't have to be born a healer. A lot of people are blessed with that gift, and I think God blesses us with different gifts for the different things that we want. But I'm reminded of the story in the Bible about the talents, the story of the talents. And he talks to his servants. The master gives his servants, he's going to be leaving, he gives his servants a different amount of talents. Now, talents, of course, in the Bible story means money. So he gives the first one, what was it, 5 talents, I think it was. And the next one he gave 3, and then the next one he gave 1. And the one that received only 1, the servant that only received 1, was afraid he might lose it, so he buried it in the earth where it wouldn't be lost. And that's pretty much all he did with it. The one who had 3 and the one who had 5 went and used their talents, the money that they'd been given, and they went there, they call them usury, or went to work with that, and they made their money work for them. And each of them earned the same amount that they had been given. So now they had, instead of 3, he had 6. And the one who had 10 now had, or one who had 5 now had 10. And so when the master came back and he asked, says, what have you done with these talents that I've given you? And of course, the first had the 10 and the second had the 6. And then the last one brought his 1 back and he says, here it is. I didn't want to lose it, so I buried it in the ground. And what did he call? The master called him a slothful servant, because he didn't use his talents, or use the talent to try and develop it. So a lot of times we think, You know, somebody's been given a gift. I always think about the pianist, the kid that can sit down and just play this fantastic stuff. I love watching the, what do they call it? America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. And I'll just watch on YouTube because people have gone out there and just got the highlights. So they got the best of the best. And I love watching them as the little kid comes up and he has this opera voice or she has an opera voice. Just warms my heart. I just get the biggest kick out of that stuff. I sat there and watched that for 2.5 hours the other night. Everybody went to bed and I just stayed up with headphones on and I was able to just listen and watch those different talents that these people had that nobody knew they did. Nobody knew that they had them. And I firmly, in the area of healing, I personally believe that there is a healer hidden deep inside every single one of us, just waiting to come out. And combine that with the pit moments that you've been through in your life, and we have all been there, the things that we learned from that, and then the things that we learned on our own to be able to make our lives better. And maybe you've been studying different kinds of modalities. Combine those two different situations along with the stuff that I teach you and the things that are available out there. What they do is they all work together to create a healer that can touch people that nobody else can. I firmly believe that there's not just one modality that everybody should use. I firmly believe that it should be a combined thing as you learn it, because you know what? All of us are different. And that's very important for you all to know. Let me tell you quickly a little bit about me. I won't spend a lot of time on it. I'm a former chef. Before then, I was a programmer. And I call it my school of hard knocks, the gnarly gut twisters of life. And my story is a series of hopes and dreams and failures, ups and downs. I've been through bankruptcies. I've been through divorces. I've been through many, many things. But the one you're going to hear about tonight is my story of my cooking experience. So my story, like I said here, is learning through failures. That seemed to be the best thing that I was given all the time. It's just always something going and then just not quite enough. And it takes a toll on you. I was seeking light when there was no visible hope. And you'll hear my story and you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's when everything is so dark, and usually you can move forward if you see that little light at the end of the tunnel. But doggone it, if somebody, you know, chops off the end of the light or closes the door, it makes it really hard to move forward. And then the breakthrough, adversity, the blessings of trials. And a lot of times we don't realize how much a blessing the trials that we're giving can be in our lives, and especially when it comes to healing. Because you know what? People come to you because sometimes you've been through that process and you know what it's like, and that way they know that they can trust you. And then the abundance of letting go of my past. Wow, has my life changed? Let me tell you a little bit about what was going on before. This is me. This is the type of stuff that I do. As a chef, I could pretty much get a job anywhere because I had a knack for carving vegetables and presentation. And this is just a quick thing. We did a lot of catering. And I've worked in hotels, casinos, colleges. I've taught in a college. Let's see, we did a lot of wedding planning, that type of thing. I've worked as an executive chef, pretty much all the positions that you could have in a kitchen. And then, let's see, I even had a restaurant. That's what I was going to say. So here's actually the restaurant we had. It was a German deli, bakery, and cafe. This is my crew down at the bottom here. And here's a picture from the balcony up here of our little German restaurant. You can see we got a stage up there at the top, and we had a band that came in, and they were just awesome. I just loved it. My favorite thing was when everybody was dancing, we would clear the tables out of the way and just have a great time. The chicken dance was a big thing. And this was one of my dreams. And my brother was in on it. My mom had invested her money also into it. And I found myself in a situation where I had attracted the money to do it originally. This was over $400,000. And all of a sudden, I was failing. I just couldn't seem to figure out what I really did was I spent way too much money building the restaurant and not enough money reserved to keep the restaurant going through the startup period. And I got to the point where I was just getting desperate. I couldn't pay my rent. Like I said right here, I owed my suppliers, had to keep finding new ones. It wasn't immediate, but this is where we finally got down to. And the fear I was going to lose my mom's retirement money. My brother's farm, his blackberry farm, was resting on this. My employees were having to wait to cash their checks. And I owed the bank and my landlord, and of course I owed taxes. And this picture is actually of the Neah Bay area up there in the peninsula of Washington, the very far point. And I was up there speaking to a church group. They'd asked me to go up there, and my church, we did a lot of speaking, and I had a responsibility, and I worked with some people, and I went up there and I spoke, and afterwards I thought, I just need to do some thinking, because this feeling of heaviness was just laying on my chest, and I didn't know what to do. And so they had a place up there. If you are a fan of Twilight series, you know that Forks is the location where the vampires are there. And then if you go out to, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Oh, it's where the werewolves lived. I should just write that down, because I've always seemed to have a problem with that. It'll come to me as we're talking. But anyway, I drove out to where the werewolves were, out there on the actual beach. And they are very creative. They have 3 different names for the beaches. There's first beach, second beach, and third beach. And third beach was a little bit of a walk out there. And out in that area is really far out. It's out of cell phone distance. Well, I went and spoke, and then I drove out there, and I walked out a mile to the beach, and I was spending a few hours there because I was just trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do. And I was writing down my situation. And little did I know that my wife was being she was getting concerned because I hadn't made it back. Now, there was a drive involved, but she knew what was going on with the restaurant, everything that was just not in right place. And I was super, super stressed. And she thought that there might be an issue. She couldn't get a hold of me, no answer, 3 or 4 hours. And so she started organizing a search party, because she thought that maybe I was suicidal. We've been married for maybe 5, 6, 7 years at that point, and she just didn't know. And when I finally got into cell phone range, of course, I got all these messages, but she had actually had people that were out looking for me. I thought, wow, that was a big thing for me. Well, they ended up taking my restaurant. The landlord decided he wouldn't work with me. The bank would. But as soon as the bank found out the landlord wouldn't work with me, then they foreclosed on me, locked me up. They put a security guard outside, armed even, as if I was going to go in and do something about it. They seized all the assets in my restaurant, and bankruptcy was the only option, and I ended up going through that. So here I am in 2009 in a situation where I have no job. It's a little town. I knew all the owners of the restaurants. I wasn't sure what I could possibly do. I told my wife, I could probably deliver pizzas. And she said, you're not delivering pizzas. She says, everybody knows who you are. And the decision was whether or not to stay in the town. But my family was there, my brothers and sisters, my mom, who had lost the money for her retirement, my brother who had lost his farm. Fortunately, one of my sisters was able to purchase the farm, but keep it in the family, but he was out a lot of money. And here I was with nothing. I had nothing. And I didn't know what I was going to do. Fortunately for me, this man came into my life. Dr. Bradley Nelsor. I was listening to a webinar. Now, I had attracted almost $400,000 to build the restaurant in the first place. I knew that the laws of abundance worked, but I didn't understand them well enough. And what had happened was once I got going, the reverse happened, because whatever you focus on happens. And I didn't know what to do. But Dr. Nelson changed my life. Now, here is the difference between men and women. I'll tell you, you ladies, you have the advantage of being able to share with other people. You know, you are willing to share amongst yourself. I would say that 90% of my clientele are women. And I envy you in the fact that if there's something wrong, you can talk to somebody else, and then they can actually recommend things, or you can talk things out. Of course, that's the way women work. You have to speak. So otherwise, you'll explode. That's just the way that you release. But by the fact that you can do that, you got to look at the guys. We think differently. There's not supposed to be anything wrong with us. We're supposed to be able to fix everything. We expect to do that kind of thing. And I had just lost everything. And I'm like, I'm broken. I don't know what to do. Everything I've tried, I kept failing. I was listening to this webinar. It was about a whole bunch of do-it-yourself, bring back to, abundance type thing people. And Dr. Bradley Nelsor was talking about this system that he had developed that helped you to release energies that were keeping you from doing things. Well, if anybody needed that, I did. And I didn't want to tell anybody about it. I talked to my wife about it, but I wasn't going to go out and try and find somebody I couldn't afford anything. First of all, I was out of money, completely busted. Fortunately, I was able to get some relief from our church and to help me stay where I was. I didn't own the house I lived in. Otherwise, we'd have lost that too. So here I was trying to understand what he did, and it completely changed my life, and that was learning the emotion code. I think I've got, I was going to show you this real quick here. So anyway, the emotion code was something that was easy, it was free, and it started to work. And I was able to at least regain a lot of the buoyancy. I don't know. I guess that might be a good way to say it, because the pressure had just been so severe on me. And so I used this on myself, and I found that I had a knack for it. Now, was I a healer at the time? Absolutely not. I learned how to do muscle testing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Muscle testing is the ability to communicate with your subconscious. And once the subconscious has a link to you or able to communicate with you, then that's when you can release these energies that are stuck. But there really was just this literal weight. And when I did this work, it got lighter and lighter and lighter. And so I started to work at a different frequency, you might say. Let me give you an example. I told you what happened with me, but let me tell you another person that I have grown to love. And this is my dear friend, Kennedy. And what I wanted to show you on this here, there's a picture of us together. We have never seen each other in the flesh. Let's put it that way. We've seen each other on pictures, and he painted this. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But one thing I learned about energy healing is that there is no distance that is too far. So if you were working with somebody on the moon or Mars or wherever, you actually could. And that's through quantum physics. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the communication is no problem. Now, Kennedy and I, our only communication was through Facebook Messenger. We've never actually talked to each other on a phone or even Skype or Zoom. But I know that there are also no limitations. I've worked with people all over the world. And I know that when they're having the work done, they feel that energy actually happening. So it's pretty cool. Then the other thing, the forces of evil have no power when you are doing it in the correct way. This is a gift from God. And you can help somebody change something. You can change somebody else's life, just like Kennedy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. This is my friend Kennedy. Okay, so he's a quadriplegic. Now his age is 40. I don't think he's got his birthday yet. 44. He's coming up on 44. And he was 16 when he dove into a pool and broke his neck. So think about the time frame that he's had to work with. Now, he's not in a big fancy area either. He's in Mombasa, Kenya. He's out in a village. And when I met him, I first started I met him on Facebook. Somebody recommended him as for the pictures and stuff that he did. I just loved his work. He was living in a hut with a dirt floor. And what I quadriplegic, I always thought that from the neck down, you weren't able to move. And obviously, if you can't move, then you can't feel anything. Well, that's not true. Because in reality, what happened, on a scale of 1 to 10, he's usually dealing with an 8 on pain level. Now, 10, if you're a 10, you're incapacitated. You're just laying on the floor. You just can't handle the pain. So he's at an 8, and what had to happen was every few hours, somebody had to come in and move him physically. You can just imagine not being able to move at all. And then just that, if you tried to hold somebody, if you weren't able to move, little things would happen, little itches and stuff. Well, that's what he's dealt with in his entire life. So he can't move his body. Someone must move him every couple hours. But what he did was he taught himself to paint. Now, this is a guy that I just admire the heck out of, because you know what? He had this issue, and I'm sure he struggled with it, but he's accepted what he's dealing with, and he has moved forward. And this is some of the pain. He can clench that brush in that hand, and I'm not sure how far you can move it, but obviously it's enough that he can do this painting. But you got to remember, he can't move. So he taught himself how to paint after buying a beginner's kit, and he actually took a class. Now, I'm sure what they had to do is they had to move him. He's got a brother who, probably moved him in a wheelchair and watched the class or whatever, but that was what he did, and this is how he supports himself. Now, his mother died, and she had actually created a foundation when he was crippled, and she helped with that foundation. The idea behind it was to help other handicapped people who needed help. So his mother died, and here he was now by himself. He has his family, and in that particular little community he's in, that village, they all work together very closely. Last year, he was finally able to move into his own apartment. So he's starting to get noticed more as a painter. So this is kind of the situation that he's living in, and his mother's foundation, and then there's another one that they work with. I talked to him about this, and he said that it's an organized group. And what they're doing here is they're providing food for the people in their area. They just went through a huge drought. So, and not to get too much into that, but I just wanted you to understand what Ken's situation is. Now, here are some of the paintings that he has. Now, we worked together for about 6 months, and just one day I just thought, I should be working with Ken. And I asked him, is it okay if we do this? And he said, yeah. He says, I would love it. Yes, my brother. He always calls me his brother. And so we started working together, and we were able to reduce his pain levels down to 0 to 3. Now, remember, he was at an 8 before. And then what happens, I always check up on him. He says now he claims he can paint longer. And then when we work together, I say, okay, so where do you want me to work? And he'll tell me, this is via Facebook Messenger once again. So we're just getting the messages back and forth. He says, I need you to do work on my digestion or whatever. And because of the ability of this work, I was able to work with him and help his subconscious to release the energies that were blocking him. So it's pretty phenomenal. This picture up here in the far left on the top is the one he painted for me. So I actually had that commission, this lion. I just looked at the different pictures, and he showed me one he did similar, and I said, that's it. I want that one. That picture was $100. He doesn't charge much. And you look at that. In fact, when I took it in to get it framed at Hobby Lobby, what they did was they looked at it and they thought it was a print. I said, no, this is hand done. And she looked a little closer. She goes, oh my gosh, you're right. So actually this sits right up here above my desk. And then what I did was I had him paint one of us together. So he chose the one for him, and he chose I gave him a bunch of pictures, and he chose to use the one with the glasses. And I told him, I said, one day we are going to have that picture in person. And I said, I want some of those beads. So apparently that's something that's common to that area. So he sends me, even today, daily messages every morning and night, just saying good night, welcome, and the blessings of this technology. And the testing, the kinesiology, which is muscle testing, has enabled that healing to take place. Remember, I was not a healer. I was a cook. So that's something that I want you to keep in mind when you do this. So the knowledge, potential knowledge of knowing how to do something, I say it's potential power because it gives you perspective, it reveals possibility, allows you to plan, it empowers you to take action. The stuff that I do as a healer, anybody can do. I firmly believe that all you got to do is want it, move forward, and practice. So we'll talk about that there. Now let's talk about you a little bit. There's a method to this madness. Whoops, boy, I didn't realize that would happen if I did that. Okay, so let's see. Here's what I've learned. I'll see, wait a second. Am I going the wrong direction? Oh my gosh, what did I do here? Gives you perspective, okay. Looks like I might have duplicated here. Okay, so how would you like to open your heart to love and happiness again? Communicate with your subconscious genius within you. Create and nurture healthy relationships with the right people. Break cycles of generational violence and abuse, and blow away your blocks to your success. Now, I throw those things up there because every single one of those things I had to go through myself. And remember, ladies, this is coming from a guy who had to fix himself. I just thought that I couldn't afford it. But yet, this is the advantage of doing this. A lot of times people come to me not realizing that they can do this work for themselves also. At least the basic stuff. Now, I've gotten pretty sophisticated into the stuff that I do, and I use not only Dr. Nelson's emotion code, but also his body code. And the body code is, the emotion code is less than 1/6 of the whole body code system. And what I've done in the past 5 years since I've been doing this, I've actually expanded it. I call it beyond the body code because we go further and deeper. But the basics of this thing, everybody can do. And every single one of these things you could do to help yourself, and you use what you know, and then you just learn to do more. So one of the things to remember, though, is that everything is energy. Everything is energy. Just remember that. And how energy works. And if you've done sessions with me, and most of you have, and you understand that I talk about different emotions, particularly because each one vibrates at a different frequency, and that's what makes it what it is. So, for example, I talk about different colors. If you think about a color, and you say there's a color you want to paint your house, you take it down to Home Depot or Lowe's, and you say, I need to know what the code is for this. And it's usually a hex code. There's a number of different ones, but the hex code is a series of numbers and letters. And when you connect into that, so you've got the numbers and letters. If you change one letter or you change one number, it changes the color that you're working with. Same thing happens with frequencies. So really what you've got is a vibration. In fact, I said it here, different things are vibrating at different frequencies, and the difference in vibration makes the things appear and feel different from each other. Now, if you were to analyze your hand, for example, you put a flashlight up there, you can usually see, kind of through it. But if you were to use a microscope and go down deep, 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 you'd find, when you got down to the atomic level, that there's all kinds of space inside the energy. And even the chair that I'm sitting in, the computers that I'm using, everything is vibrating at a different frequency. So you just need to remember that when we're working on stuff, that's you. You are pure energy. The invisible energy, is the body and spirit. I forgot I had this stuff on here. You could also call it a number of different names. Chi, prana, two different ways to say the same word there. Physical body is an energy in the form of matter. So here's the master ingredient, which is energy, which is everything. And I use this example a lot, and you've all heard this. And if you haven't, then just bear, this will be great information for you. But you think about it, if you look in the room that you're in right now and you see empty air, and when in reality, it's not very empty. It's actually got all kinds of things going on. There's radio waves, X-rays, infrared, thought waves, emotions. All of them are vibrating in the areas that you are in right now, but you can't see them. We actually are dealing with two different types of bodies here. Let's see if I get to the right one there. Well, okay. I think it's right after him, but we've got the spiritual body. I'll use this hand for that. The physical body, which we are looking at the five senses, right? We can see, hear, smell, taste, and something else. and then we have our spirit body. And our spirit body fits inside of this like a glove. And if the spirit body, if it's outside of the spirit, outside of the body, it can see 360 degrees. It can do thousands of things at the same time. Once it's inside our physical body, then it's being restricted. It can only see one thing at a time. But the subconscious or the spiritual body, and I'll kind of use these interchangeably, can still see things that are around you. It can see all the energies. And when we get into the point later, if you have goals and things that you want, it's kind of like a radio. You know, all of that stuff is sitting out there somewhere. We'll get into that later. It's not so much tonight. But just remember that everything that you want in your life is surrounding you right now. You just can't see it. So one of the things that we're dealing with there is quantum physics. It's one of the reasons why we can be connected. Of course, this is a younger picture of Einstein. And he was talking about energy is intelligent. Now, Einstein had some problems with quantum physics. It didn't always go the way he wanted it to go. And he's not really the guy who we all kind of recognize quantum physics with his picture, but he's not really the one that first started it. In fact, he was very frustrated by it. But one of the things that we all learned from what he did and other scientists like him is that we realized that we are all connected in some way. And it's just, we have this network out there that we're all connected. And especially when we've made a connection to do work, energy work. And so we can connect, and I can connect with anybody, and I do it with permission because I want to make sure I'm not invading somebody's space. And then the subconscious can communicate with me, and that's really where we're going to be going eventually. But we are all connected, just like Kennedy and I were connected via Facebook Messenger. I had permission to work with him. But there's unlimited possibilities. There's unlimited answers, which is why quantum physics can really blow your brain if you're not you know, I look at it at a very low, you know, it's like quantum physics for dummies type thing. But we can also harness what we call matter unorganized. And that's out there and it's around you, and that's how the laws of abundance are manifested, and that's through quantum physics. I want you to be aware of that. We're going to come back to that later. Probably not in this particular class, but just remember, quantum physics is a very important part of our ability to heal. Okay, so this is our dual nature. Now you'll see that there's a spirit here above the person's physical body. And like I said, with the two hands, we have the physical and we have the spiritual. One slides inside the other. And when we are working together, you know, what happens when the spirit leaves the body? You know, that usually means that you're dying. Because that's what animates this meat suit that we have here. There's a reason why we're here on the earth, and I don't want to get too much into that right now, but I want you to understand that that energy between the consciousness and the subconscious does make a difference. So when the body becomes imbalanced, and the energy, I should say the energy in the body becomes imbalanced, then that's usually when you get sick. So if people are having problems with health, whether it's relationships, whatever, it's because there's usually an imbalance in the body. Dr. Nelson first worked with the trapped emotions, and that's what I did originally, was learning how to use the trapped, you know, how to release these trapped emotions to try and bring the body back into balance, because there's negative energy and there's positive energy. Okay, so we got imbalances that affects your physical body, and when the stuff gets trapped inside of you, it can cause problems. Now, do you see it? Oh, heck, you don't see nothing. Emotional energy can get stuck in your body, and we call them trapped emotions. And a lot of us are carrying around emotional baggage. Wouldn't you agree? Raise your hand if you think that's possible. Okay, everybody's raising their hand. That's good. That's good to see that you're all still awake there, too. Let's move on here to the next one. Oh, I see. I got some notes over here. Emotion code helps us get rid of it. It becomes our best selves. And this is an energy. Now, I have found that they can be small and they can be big. They can be so small that they can fit behind a cornea in your eye, and yet they can be big enough in there, and this could be a combination of emotions. I call them a psychic trauma when more than one emotion is happening at the same time, and it builds this hybrid, and it could be lodged in some place in your body, causing an imbalance. So you ever try those little plastic mirrors, you know, when they have them, you can press on it. In fact, you probably have seen that on a screen, you know, on the old computer screens. If you were to put your finger up there and push on that screen, a lot of times there'll be a little distortion. Are you familiar with that? Does that make sense? Well, that's when an energy is pushing on something. And that's kind of what you think about this being inside her shoulder or her chest or her head or wherever. You can see where that would distort the energy flow in a particular area. So a ball of, okay, so the size of the orange cantaloupe, most people have hundreds. Okay, they can cause you problems. See if we can get to my, oh man, I didn't realize I had all this stuff here. I cannibalized some of my other presentations to put these together, so that's what you're looking at. Imbalance your energy, symptoms, it can be emotional or physical, and can morph into a disease. Now look at the word disease. It's dis-ease if you break it apart. Okay, it's something that's uncomfortable. It's not working correctly. This is a picture I loved. I went ahead and put the different emotions out there because this could be us trying to move around. We got the creativity is pretty amazing that they can tie all this stuff onto a bicycle. But I thought, how perfect to show what we're dealing with. And you'll notice that I put them in colors because sorrow, 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 and purple, because there's usually more than just one emotion there. Horror, two blue ones, you got terror, you got panic, you got all different kinds of things. But this is so true. And as we do this work and then we're releasing the imbalances, then what we're doing is we're unloading this thing piece by piece. And you'll know that you wouldn't try and grab terror out of the middle. You have to actually kind of work your way around to get down to the base. And that's kind of the way it is with us too. The subconscious knows what's going on. So the question comes up, how do we find these emotions? And we can find them using the emotion code. And the way we find them is by using muscle testing. So here is an old version of the emotion code chart by Dr. Nelson. And there's 2 columns. You'll notice that if you counted them all up, there's 60 different emotions. They're all bad. Every one of them is a negative emotion. The only one that comes close to being a good one is overjoy here up in B1. And you'll notice that we got 3 columns there. So row 1, this one here on the far left, tells us the emotions are generated from these areas of the body. So row 1 with abandonment, betrayal, forlorn, and so forth on the A and B are generated from the heart or the small intestine. You look at row 2, it's spleen or stomach. How interesting that each one of them has their own group, all vibrating at specific frequencies. Now, it doesn't matter really what column they're in, A or B, it's interchangeable, it doesn't matter. But it does kind of matter. If I keep hitting something that comes back on row 1, then I'm thinking, oh, maybe I got something going on with the heart. The advantage to, and this is the genius of Dr. Nelson, is the fact that he put them into charts. Because when we're testing, when we're working with the body, we only get one at a time the emotions that we're, or the things that we're dealing with. And, oh, well, this one I got kind of out of place here. Let's see, where is it? Oh, let's see. I'll have to come back at this, folks. And by using muscle testing, we only get a yes or a no. So that's what we're dealing with too. And muscle testing, let's talk about that a quick sec. Muscle testing is your connection with the subconscious. So if you didn't understand this, you've never seen this before, you can actually get a doctorate in kinesiology or more as you study this type of thing. But the muscle testing part of it, anybody can do this. And what you're doing is you're getting a reaction off the body. So if you weren't, you could do this with like a lie detector test. You know, they hook you up with all the wires, and you think about what is it that they're actually testing against. You got electrodes on your face and on your chest, and they ask you questions. And what happens is your body's biometrics, the blood pressure, the heartbeat, the electrical system, the acupuncture system, all that responds to the way that you respond in answers. They ask you, tell us something true, tell us something false. And they're reading and monitoring. And then finally, when they get to the point where they've got a decent reading on how your body reacts, that's when they start asking questions. So imagine being able to do this without having to hook somebody up. Well, I grew up with that, with a chiropractor who would make an adjustment, just like Dr. Nelson, and then he would test, and they always put your arm out, and they push down on it, and if it goes down, just like he's doing in the picture here, so if it goes down easy, that means that that's a no, that's a weak response. If it's a strong response, then they know that they got the adjustment correct, and you're good to go. If it's a weak one, they put you back on the table, make another adjustment. So that's muscle testing. And when you're muscle testing, there's a number of different ways you can do it, but it's important because it allows us to know what the subconscious is thinking. Now, Western medicine, like it says here, is not yet harnessing this energy. Although you'd be surprised how many doctors now we have coming to the classes that Dr. Nelson presents. I've worked with brain surgeons. I have worked with a number of different kinds of doctors. Some are chiropractors, some are just different forms of medicine, and I don't even know that I'm doing that at the time until later, when I talk with them and find out they have that training. But muscle testing, anybody can learn this, and all we're doing, once again, is we're reading the reflex or the biometrics of the body. So what do you need to muscle test? You need to believe that you can get an answer, number one. Believe it or not, your body's giving you an answer no matter what is happening on the other end, whether you're picking it up or not. It's just simply a matter of being able to understand what your body's telling you. Permission, now obviously if you're working on yourself, I would hope that you give yourself permission. But you'll be surprised. Sometimes your subconscious doesn't trust you. So that's not the norm. Most of the time, you're going to be able to test. But if you're not able to test, that's usually when you find somebody else. You come to me or whatever. I work with people all the time who said, I just can't muscle test. And we go and we find out there's certain things that are causing that. And then once we get that adjusted, we can do that. You find a baseline. And what a baseline means that once you are connected, I ask, is this give me a yes, give me a no? Do I have permission? And when I get the right answers, then I know that I've tested, so I know that the answer is going to be correct. Or, when I'm going to be able to release, in other words, when I'm testing somebody else. If I have a baseline, I know what a yes is, and I also know what a no is, and then I can work with that person. When you practice, you're testing to make sure you understand the answers, and then you trust. These are huge. And, I work with people all the time when they're trying to learn how to do this. The biggest thing is they don't trust their answers. I was the same way. Everybody goes through that, so that's not something new. Let's see. Here's one of the ways of testing, which is what we call the sway test. And we don't need to get into a whole lot of this today, but I want you to understand that if you learn to do muscle testing, you can do anything. It's all a matter of asking the subconscious. Let me tell you something, why it's important. And I'm going to back up here just a little bit here. So here we've got the conscious mind. This is an iceberg, and the conscious mind is very limited in what it's aware of. But that's what we've been dealing with all our life. And yet with the example of a iceberg, that there's only a small portion that's on the top. Most of the rest is down underneath. And you know what? only 1% of the intelligence is attributed to the conscious mind. The rest of it is what really controls you. Your subconscious takes care of everything. It knows what happens. It knows when it happens. It knows, it doesn't know why something happened because it's dealing with whatever it is, but it does know what needs to happen when you're trying to overcome things and get out of it. So it's really important to realize that this is the conscious mind, the subconscious, this part down here. And of course, that's 99% of your intelligence. It remembers, archives, everything. It knows what wrongs and knows what you need. So that being said, let's move you forward a little bit. This is the emotion code chart. Now you can download this from my website at thebodyemotions.com. There's a spot up there. It says, hey, do you want one of these? You want to know more? And if you click on it, you can get my little booklet. It's a PDF, and you can also get this chart. And what I recommend is you get it and you start practicing. You can go on YouTube and you can find out all the different kinds of ways to muscle test. Muscle testing is going to be the big thing. I'm going to give you just a little bit of information here. And there are other ways of doing it. Here's, for example, I do the finger pull. You know, so it's like this one on the, says the one loop and slide through muscle testing on the last two pictures there. There's little ones, there's friction, there's using the double loop, all different kinds that you can use, and each one is a little bit different. Now we're almost out of time. I want to hear, are there some questions that you might have for me? If you have a question, then unmute yourself and ask. Do you want me just to keep pushing through? Does this make sense so far for you folks? Everybody's following? Okay, so a lot of you, like I said, if you've worked with me and you understand what we're dealing with. Well, I'm going to introduce to you probably the biggest thing that people run into. Oh, that's the other thing I was going to say. You can create your own style of testing. Remember, all you're doing is you're reading the biometrics of your body. And that's all that's happening with muscle testing and kinesiology there. So one of the biggest things that can happen to you is, you got to remember, the subconscious's job is to keep you alive. And when you are under attack, that's when the subconscious needs to do something to protect you, because you can actually die of heartache. And that would, you know, and all these different emotions are around you. So what happens is when something goes on, when you're under attack that way, your subconscious builds a wall. Okay, you got all different kinds here. We call it a heart wall. And the heart wall actually is, we actually gauge how thick it is, but what it does is it actually protects your heart, keeps it safe. Unfortunately, it's using negative emotions usually to do that kind of protection. And what it does is it creates a lack of communication. I use this example all the time. If somebody is standing outside my front door, and I have a glass door and I got a regular door, and I'm on the inside, and we're trying to hold a conversation back and forth, there's no way we're going to be able to talk at a regular voice. We're going to have to raise our voices, even though we're not mad at each other. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually probably walk away from that situation feeling like we really didn't connect. Now, if I open the door and I open the glass door, now we can see each other and we can communicate. We don't have to raise our voice. Now we're having a great time because I can read your body language. I can see your smiling face. And now we just really are connecting. That's what a heart wall does. It's like having those doors closed. And if you can't communicate with your spouse or your significant other or people at work, nobody gets you, it's usually because you got a heart wall there. And the body will do that to protect you. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about a heart wall. And like I said, if you go out there on the website, thebodyemotions.com, you can download the little booklet that's there too. So here's an example of what's going on when you have that heart wall. So it says, Stan needs to become a better listener. He's in a unicorn outfit. He says, no, I said I love a man in a uniform. So it's a miscommunication that can really mess up your life. So here we go. But you can be free, and It's easy. You can experience your best life now. And I want you to understand that anybody can do this. Now, I put this up here because I want to make sure this is where you go to get the replays of the MasterMind. Okay, I'm going to be putting this out there as a recorded, and I'll stick it out there on the MasterMind. It'll be its own little deal. It'll talk about becoming a healer, so you can click on it and you can see it. Now, I'll edit it a little bit to make sure that if there's something you need to zoom in on, it'll be zoomed in, and if we need to cut something out, if I'm stuttering too bad. But I think we're pretty good. It usually is pretty much the way we get it here. Now, is there anybody with questions for me? Still no questions? You know it all? All right. Is there anything else that I can tell you right now? Something else you want to know? Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this. We want to try and keep this to an hour. And I always want you to be aware that we have other classes that we're going to be starting. Just real quick, I'll tell you about this. I have another class that is pretty intensive as far as a lot more information and things that you can use. I always recommend that people get a hold of the emotion code, and I also recommend the body code too, from Dr. Nelson. The biggest thing on the takeaway on that is that he has a system that we use, charting. It's real simple to use charts. Now, I have expanded that, and I also have a set of charts of my own that I go over, and that's called the Ultimate Healer Program. It combines a lot of different things. So we'll talk more about that later, but I want you to be aware that we're going to be starting another Ultimate Healer class in October. I've got a lot of people that are saying, please, can we do this? I was going to wait till December, but they're saying, no, we want it now. So I said, okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to be doing that. We'll do these little classes like this, but the Ultimate Healer is really quite fun. It's a great group. We have a lot of conversations. A lot of it, it's all online, and you can find it at healersresource.com. But when we get going in October, what happens is every 2 weeks we do a replay, a Q&A to answer any questions for the module we just went over. It's got 5 different modules. The first module is about muscle testing. Second module is about the emotion code and the body code. The third module is about beyond the body code, which is my stuff that I've created. The fourth module is about the 5.5 parts of you and helping you get back in sync and body syncing. And then the 5th module is Frequencies 101. That's where we take things that you want to do in the future and we figure out how do we find out the frequency, and then we make the adjustments to get there. It's a lot of fun. In fact, we're going to be having a Ultimate Healer retreat in November. So it's going to be fun. So those people who are in that class are welcome to come to that retreat. So hopefully we'll have 20, 30 people that are there, and it'll be a lot of fun. Networking is everything, folks. All right. If nothing else, then I will let you go. And hopefully we'll see you soon.